Hello everybody, and welcome back to another card game tutorial video. In this video we're going to be working on adding audio sounds to our game. For instance, in the first room we're going to have the intro to the Red and Blue game as a background sound. And then in our new game Build a Deck room we're going to have the Poke Center soundtrack in the background. And then if we select the continue button, that will play the intro to a battle, and then in the background it's going to maintain that battle theme song. We're also going to add sound effects for setting cards down, drawing cards, and shuffling the deck. And what that will sound like, shuffling the deck, is this. In the next video we're going to be adding the ability to attack the opponent. We're going to be adding summoning animations, and we're also going to be adding defeat animations. So if you're interested in this and you want to follow along, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support this series and be able to download these program files, be sure to check out my Patreon linked in the description below. Now, for these program files, I will be uploading them to my Patreon, but they will be without the actual audio sounds, since the sounds are copyright and they're not easily obtainable like the card sprites that we use. I don't want to infringe on the copyright laws. So I just wanted to say that before we jumped into this. Now, the first thing we're going to do is address some bug fixes from the last video, and I'll have a timestamp of when we get into the actual content of adding the audio files. So if you're interested in just the audio programming, be sure to follow that timestamp. So a few things we want to do first is fix our health point equation in our card object when we create a field card in the left released event. Here, when we evolve a card, we have health points equal to this. Now initially we had our damage counters equaling this equation, which is why damage counters are here. What we did was we changed damage counters to health points, but we did not do it here. So we want to change this. And then in our opponent object, we want to do the same in the step event for evolved cards. So here we want to change damage counters to health points, and here. Now another bug fix I want to address is when we use the trainer card Pokemon Center. So I want to show you what the issue is. If we go to our Pokemon Center script, in the script discard field card pile script call, I'm going to remove this alarm call that sends the card to the discard pile. And I want to show you what the issue is. So I'm going to set this field up to have Pokemon on every slot and have energy cards attached to them. So now that I have my field set up and I use Pokemon Center, you'll see all of the energy cards printed on the field. But we know that we put 2 energy cards here, 2 energy cards here, and 1 energy card on all of these cards. The first issue is the first card is being printed directly underneath the Pokemon card. And then the second issue is when we use this energy card is printed on top, which is what we do not want. So let's fix these problems. So what we want to do to fix the cards being printed directly under the Pokemon card is we want to change this I declaration to argument 0 + 1. And then we're going to change the depth that it's printed at to 0, because that doesn't really matter since we set the depth here in the code. In the field card object, the position dictates the depth of the card. So then, since we added 1 to I here, we want to subtract it by 1 in this pile array. So these 3 additions to these lines were just to print the energy card in the proper place, which isn't directly behind the Pokemon card. Now, to get the first energy card from being printed on top of the Pokemon card, now in order to get the card from printing directly on top of the Pokemon card in the battle position, we want to change the position variable equal to -I. So if we've done that correctly, the energy card should be printed out properly. So I will set up this field one more time. So now that I have the field set up, I'm going to use Pokemon Center again. So now you see that the correct amount of energy cards are being printed out, and they're not being printed directly below the Pokemon card. And now at the battle position, the energy cards are not being printed directly on top of the Pokemon card. So that fixed that issue. Now another thing we need to do is we never declared our damage counters after we changed the health point equations. So this is what's going to happen now. If I try to evolve it, it's going to say that my health points were not initialized before calling on them. So if we go to our opponent object, we need to change this to health points. So now health points is declared, but since I've removed damage counters initialization from the opponent field card, we're going to need to initialize that in that object. So in opponent field card object in the create event, we're going to add D counters, and we're going to set that equal to 0. So now that we have that, let's make sure that the Pokemon Center Trainer works properly and that we can evolve Pokemon. So as you can see at the other end, it no longer prints out the damage counter since we've corrected that. And we're going to evolve Magikarp into Gyarados, which it does correctly. And then I'm going to add some energy cards. And then when I use Pokemon Center, we can see that it does work correctly. So now let's get into audio files. So the first thing we want to do is create a sound, and we're going to call this sound SND_opening. This is going to be the opening song of the Pokemon Red and Blue game. I downloaded this song from YouTube directly, so I can't provide these audio sounds since that would infringe on their copyright, so you're going to have to find a way to download it on your own. We added that song, and you can hear it in the background. So now we want to create another sound, and we're going to call this one sound_battle intro. Now, this sound I took from the battle theme song from the game, but I cut the beginning sound out, which sounds like this. And that's it. And then with that, I saved the last bit of the theme and created another audio sound, and I'm going to call that Sound Battle. And that's going to sound like this. So that it will start so that when I play this, it starts immediately after that intro sound. And the next sound I want to create, we're going to call SND_PokeCenter. And that's going to sound like this. Alright, and the next three sounds we're going to create are card sound effects. Now, I can provide these ones, so I may leave a Google document link on my Twitter or in the description of this video, so be sure to check that out. And the first sound is going to be the snap of a card, and that's going to sound like this. This is what it's going to sound like when we pick up a card. The next sound is going to be the setting sound. So when we set a card onto the field, it's going to sound like this. And the last sound we're going to upload is going to be a shuffle sound. And that's going to sound like this. Now that we have that, we have all of the sounds we're going to add thus far into our game. Of those sound files, the first ones we're going to work on are going to be the theme songs and adding those into different rooms to our game. There are many ways you can do this. You can create an audio object, or you can just place sound effects wherever you want to place them in the game. And in this video, we're going to do both of those. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an audio object. Now this is going to dictate whether or not the game has sound, and it's going to dictate what theme song it's playing in the background. And the first thing we're going to add to this object is a create event. And in that create event, we're going to call on a GML variable called persistent. And what this is going to do is it's going to make this object appear in every room of the game. And then we're going to set the volume equal to 5. The next variable we're going to create is going to be called play. And we're going to set that equal to true. And what this variable represents is whether or not the object is going to be playing the audio sounds. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to change its depth to equal -1000 so that it's printed above everything else. The next thing we're going to do is create a step event. And within the step event, we're going to call on a GML script called audio master gain. And this is going to set the overall volume of the audio in your room. And we're going to set that equal to volume divided by 10. So if you remember, we set volume equal to 5. So this is effectively going to play the audio at half of the volume that it will allow. Now, then we're going to have a condition statement that says if play is equal to true, we're going to change its sprite index to equal the audio sprite, which we have not created yet. And then we're going to set the volume equal to 5. And then an else, which means play is false, we're going to change the sprite index to equal another sprite we haven't created yet called SPR mute. And then we're going to set the volume equal to 0. Now, to play a specific sound in a specific room, we're going to use these condition statements. So if room is equal to 0 and the audio isn't playing, and we're going to do the opening sound, and that's supposed to say is playing, then we're going to play the audio sound. And that's going to be sound opening, and we're going to set its priority equal to 1, and we're going to set the loops equal to false, so we don't play the song or the sound over and over again. So you can see what this script call needs down here at the bottom. Now, what this is doing is making sure that in room 0, if this audio isn't already playing, play the audio. Now, we need this here because what it will do is continuously play the audio over and over again, and we don't want that. So now what we want to do is, if we aren't in the room 0 and the audio is playing, we actually want to turn that audio off. So we're going to use audio stop sound and do sound opening. So now that we have this, we can test it to make sure it works. But first we need to create these sprites. So we're going to create a new sprite and we're going to call it sound audio. And we're going to import a new sprite, and this sprite will be in the Google Doc link on my Twitter page or linked in the description below. So we're going to take this one, we're going to justify it in the middle center, and then we're going to set its width and height equal to 50. Now we're going to create a new sprite and we're going to call it SND mute, and we're going to use the same sprite, but we're going to edit the image. We're going to select this rectangular select tool, and we're going to remove this part of the sprite. And then we're going to set its width and height equal to 50. So now that we have that, we are able to test this to make sure it works. But we need to add it into our room. So if we go to rooms, and we drag audio here, which we're just going to set it in the corner, but let's set the sprite of the audio object here and put it in a good spot in this corner, and let's test it. So we get an error saying that the sprite audio doesn't exist. So maybe we misspelt it, which we did. If we go back to our workplace or workspace, you can see that I put SND audio instead of SPR. So let's fix that. So if we click the audio object, we didn't add the code to mute it, so we can't test that, but we know that it's supposed to play this sound in this room, and it's not supposed to play the sound if we're in a different room. So let's select new game. As you can see, since we're not in room 0 anymore, it's going to stop that audio from playing. So let's add the left release event for this object and add the conditions for the other rooms. So we're going to add a left released event for our mouse, and what we're going to do is, if play is true, we're going to set play equal to false, and if it's not true, we're going to set play equal to true. Now, if we go back to our step event, we need to create conditions for our other rooms. So we're going to do another else if statement, and we're going to say if room is equal to 1 and this audio isn't playing, and this is going to be the battle room, so it's going to be SND battle. But since we're adding an additional sound, which is the intro, which sounds like this, we want to make sure that that doesn't play until that sound is over. So we need to add another condition to this else if statement, and that's going to be, and this audio isn't playing, and that's going to be the SND_battle intro. Then we're going to play that sound. We're going to set its priority to 1, and then we want to loop this since we're going to be in this room for a long time. Now, if we leave this room, we don't want to play this sound if it's playing. So we're going to create this condition. And then we're going to stop that audio sound. Now we're going to do the same for our deck creator room. So I'm just going to copy this one over because it's just going to be like the first room, except the room level is going to change and the audio is going to be poke center. So let's just bulk change it over here. And since this may take some time, we're going to set its loops equal to true. So now that we have all of the conditions for the room, we can now test this object. So as you can see, it's playing the intro in the main menu. If I select the audio object, it will mute the sound. Now, since we've made it persistent, it's going to keep this state no matter which room I go into. So even if I leave this room, everything in this object will stay the same. So if I select new game, it should be playing the Poke Center theme song, but since I have it muted, I won't be able to hear it. So when I unmute it, we will hear the sound. Now, if I go into the battle room, we're going to hear it start off in a weird position. That's because we only want to play that intro whenever we select the continue button. So when the sound repeats, they don't have to hear that intro again. So this is all of the audio sounds and code we are going to add in our audio object. Everything else is going to be placed where we want it in our code. So for instance, this battle intro needs to be added whenever we select the continue button, and that's going to be in our object menu. So if we go to the step event in our menu object, we have this condition here that says if we've released our left mouse button, if it's step 1, which is our battle room, we want to play the battle intro sound. So we're going to do audio play sound like we did in our audio object. We're going to do sound_battle intro. We're going to set its priority equal to 1, and we're going to set its loops equal to false. So now this audio will play, and then when this audio is done being played, the rest of the theme song will play on a loop. So I'm going to select the continue button. We hear the battle intro, and then it plays the rest of the theme song, which is what we want it to do. So now what we want to do is add the other sound effects. So the sound effects we want to add for drawing is going to be added in the scripts draw and draw prize. And this will be pretty simple, since all we need to do is add the audio play GML script at the very beginning, and we're going to use the sound FNAP. We're going to set its priority equal to 1, and we're going to set its loops equal to false. And then we're going to do the same for script draw prize. So as you'll see, when we draw cards, we hear that FNAP sound every time we draw a card. Now, the next sound we want to add is the set sound. And we need to add this in a few places. And the first place we're going to add that is going to be in our prize card object. This is going to be added here in the step event, and we only want it to play one time. So we're going to set, since it's in the step event, it would recall it over and over again. And in order to prevent something happening over and over again, what we did before was we created this if is sent condition that allowed everything in this condition to only run one time. And we're going to utilize that and add the audio play sound, and instead of it being FNAP, we're going to make it set. So now every time a prize card reaches the position it's supposed to be, it will make the FNAP sound, or the set sound. The next place we want to add that is going to be in the object card left released event. And we're going to add that when we play a stage 0 Pokemon card. We want to play it when we use a trainer card, and we want to add it in the remove from hand condition for this, just in case the card that is being used is unable to be used. If it's unable to be used, we don't want to have the set sound play. We only want it to be played when it is used. We also want to add that when we set an energy card onto a Pokemon. We also want to play it when we evolve a Pokemon. And lastly, when we use an assist trainer. And we're going to add that in the remove from hand condition. And there are a few assist trainer cards that wouldn't play that set sound, and that will be Defender and Plus Power. So we want to add that to their conditions. We also want to use that in our field card object in Alarm 0, because this is going to move the field card from the field to the discard pile, and we want to play the FNAP sound once we get it to the discard pile. So these first two conditions move it towards the discard pile, and once it reaches there, sets it at the discard pile. And this condition says if it is at the discard pile, we want to play the set sound. And the last place we want to add this is going to be in our card object in Alarm 2. This is going to do the same thing. It's sending the card in our hand to the discard pile. And whenever it reaches the discard pile, we want to play that set sound. In our deck object, before we test the set sounds, we want to create a condition here that won't allow us to draw a card, which we're going to add to our draw script instead of the left released event. So, and what that is we're going to move this condition to be above the audio play sound script call. And that's so that when we draw a card, it won't play the FNAP sound if we are unable to draw a card. So now that we have that, let's test it. So we know we have the draw sound, but now let's test the set sound. So we heard it there. We heard it again. We heard it again. We also want to test it when we add an energy card, when those cards are sent to the discard pile, and when we evolve a card. So if we evolve Squirtle into Blastoise, it still makes that sound. So now that we have the FNAP and the set sounds, let's now add the shuffle sound. And that's going to be in our shuffle script. So what we want to do here is going to be a little different. We're going to create a condition underneath the conditions not to shuffle the deck. And we're going to say if field select does not equal 77, which is Pokemon Trader, we want to play the shuffle sound. And we're going to set its loops equal to false. And we're going to add a little comment here that says if Pokemon Trader not being used, just so we know. So the reason why we did that is when we use Pokemon Trader, it shuffles the deck 2 times, but we only want it to shuffle 1 time. So if you want to hear what that will sound like, it'll sound like this. There's the first one, and there's the second one. And it's doing that because when we take a card from the deck, it shuffles, and since we're reusing that for Pokemon Trader, we don't want to take that shuffle away, and since it doesn't change the game, we're just going to keep it as is. So we want to have this condition here so it doesn't do it the first time. But also, when we started the game, we heard the deck shuffle at the beginning, which we don't want because that just doesn't sound pleasant. So if we go to the Object Player Create event, and we go to where our deck is initialized, it's going to shuffle the deck, and that's where the sound comes from. So what we're going to put immediately after it is audio stop sound, and we're going to do sound shuffle. So that will stop that. But now, since we added this condition in our shuffle deck script, we used field select. But in our player create event, field select is initialized all the way at the bottom here. So now we have to initialize that before we use the shuffle script. So we're going to add that here. So now that we have that, the shuffle sound should not be made at the beginning of the game. So if we hit continue, the shuffle sound wasn't made, and now we have all of the sound effects we want to have in our game. So that's all I wanted to go over in this video. In the next video, we're going to go over attacking the opponent's cards. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to see a video going into the options where we can change the master volume and give the player the option to ignore some sounds, be sure to leave that in a comment below and I can get to that in a later video. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you want to support this series and download these program files, be sure to check out my Patreon linked in the description below. Until next time.